The cowboy didn't even look at the bride. In a room full of people, every eye was on Elena Mercer. She was golden-haired and perfect, the belle of Montana territory, promised to a wealthy man. The deal was sealed. But a cowboy named Rowan walked right past her, past all the money and glamour. He ignored everything society cared about. He stopped in front of her sister, the one no one ever saw. And in that single moment, everything changed. If you want to see how an underdog gets her day, stay with me. Drop your city in the comments below. This is Lydia's story, set in Montana, 1883. The morning sun crept into the Mercer home, lighting up the cold October air. Lydia Mercer stood at her window, watching the mountains glow with autumn colors. Her breath made a small cloud on the cold glass, disappearing as quickly as it came. At 23 years old, Lydia was unmarried and felt completely unremarkable. She traced the outline of the peaks she had sketched 100 times in her secret journal. No one knew about that book, hidden safely under her mattress. It held all her secret dreams, drawings of wild horses running free under impossible sunsets. It was a life that belonged only to her. Lydia, her mother's voice cut through the quiet. Martha Mercer never called for you, she commanded. Coming, mother. Lydia took one last glance at the mountains before turning away from her window. Her reflection showed dark hair that wouldn't behave and a jawline that was too strong for a lady. She was built for work, not for admiration. She was practical, not pretty. The blue dress on her door seemed to mock her. It was her only nice one. She had sewn it herself late at night, hoping that someone might finally notice her in it. But no one ever did. She felt invisible. She quickly dressed, pulling her hair back into the severe bun her mother demanded. The Mercer house was a simple home built from weathered wood and sheer determination. Her father built it 25 years ago, when he brought his Boston bride to Montana. It had survived harsh winters and even a fire, but it was filled with disappointment. There you are, her mother said from the stove, her voice full of judgment. Your father is waiting. The Cartwrights will be here soon, and we need to talk. And please, fix your posture. You carry yourself like a field hand. Lydia straightened her back, feeling that old familiar ache of not being good enough. The kitchen was warm from the fire, but it offered her no comfort at all. The tension in the kitchen was as thick as smoke. Her father, William Mercer, sat staring into a coffee cup. His hands were weathered, and his eyes were fixed on a point only he could see. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the last one. The drought had destroyed their small ranch, taking half their cattle and almost all of their hope. The Mercer family ranch, once a proud operation, was now running on credit and prayer. William's hair was now gray, his shoulders were slumped, and the fire in his eyes had faded to a dull glow. The Cartwright marriage proposal was their only salvation, or more accurately, it was Elena's. Sit down, Lydia, her father said, his voice kind but tired. We need to talk about tonight's dinner. Lydia sat in her usual spot at the table, a place she'd held for 23 years. She was to the left of her father, always in the shadow of her mother's empty chair. She folded her hands and waited. The Cartwrights have officially confirmed the engagement, William finally said. Silas is going to formally propose to Elena tonight. Both families will be here, and the wedding will be in the spring. That's wonderful news, Father. But was it? Lydia was not sure. She remembered the way Silas Cartwright looked at her sister. It was like a man pricing livestock at an auction. His gaze had no warmth, no kindness, only cold calculation. But Elena acted happy, or at least she accepted her fate. For a woman in the Montana territory, that was probably the same as happiness. The Cartwrights are bringing everyone, her mother Martha said, placing eggs before her husband. That includes all their ranch hands. We will need more chairs. Ranch hands? Lydia was suddenly interested. To a formal engagement dinner? The Cartwrights have their own ways, William said, with a hint of disapproval he tried to hide. Old Jacob Cartwright likes to keep his men close. He says a man who won't eat with his workers doesn't deserve to have them. It was a strange idea for such a rich family. Strange or not, we will make them welcome. This alliance is too important to mess up. An alliance. That is what her sister's marriage was. It was a business deal, a merger of their struggling cattle ranch with the Cartwright fortune. Elena's beauty was being traded for their family's survival. It was just the way things were done. Lydia knew she should feel nothing but gratitude. The Cartwright money would save their family. Her father would get to keep his land, her mother would keep her social standing, and Elena would live a life of pure luxury. But a cold feeling settled deep inside Lydia's chest when she thought of it. It felt like a heavy weight, making it hard for her to breathe. "Where is Elena?" she asked, noticing her sister was not there. "Still in bed," Martha said, her lips a thin, tight line. "The girl needs her beauty rest. She has to look absolutely perfect tonight." Of course she did. Elena always had to look perfect. Elena, with her perfect golden hair, her sky blue eyes, and her skin as smooth as cream. Elena, who made grown men trip over their own feet with just a single glance. Elena, who never had to wonder if she was loved or wanted. Lydia had stopped trying to compete with her sister a long time ago. There was simply no point. "I was thinking of riding out this morning," Lydia said, her voice neutral. "I need to check the north pasture fence." Martha's tone grew sharp. "Riding? On the day of your sister's engagement dinner?" "I'll be back by noon," Lydia replied. "No, you will stay here and help prepare. The silver needs polishing." "But mother—" "That is not a request, Lydia." William cleared his throat. "Let her go, Martha. The fence needs checking," he said gently. "Lydia is the only one who can manage it before the cattle drive." Martha's jaw set, but she did not argue with her husband. Instead, she turned back to the stove, her angry silence filling the room. "Be back before noon," William said. "And Lydia, try to stay clean for tonight." Presentable. That was the word. Lydia left the table, her breakfast untouched. She grabbed her jacket and her saddlebag from the hook by the door. Inside, her sketchbook was hidden under a coil of rope. The barn was her true home. It smelled of hay, horses, and the freedom of the Montana wind. She took a deep breath, feeling the tension from the house melt away. Her mare, Tempest, a beautiful gray Appaloosa, nickered a soft hello. The horse was too spirited for anyone else, but perfect for Lydia. She had tamed Tempest herself 3 years ago, earning the horse's deep trust. Tempest was the only creature in the world that seemed to understand her. Lydia stroked the mare's soft nose. "Are you ready for a run, girl?" Tempest tossed her head, her dark eyes shining. Lydia saddled her with practiced skill. She had been riding her whole life, a skill her father found practical. Her mother, however, thought it was not proper for a young lady. Soon she was riding away from the homestead, leaving it behind in the dust. The crisp morning air felt wonderful against her skin. It made her feel alive. She rode north, but the fence could wait. That was not her real purpose. She just needed an hour of peace with her sketchbook and the open sky. The creek was low, singing its quiet song as it flowed over the smooth stones. Cottonwood trees with golden leaves lined the beautiful banks. Lydia dismounted, letting Tempest drink as she found a rock and opened her sketchbook. She sketched the woman she kept hidden from the world, drawing the distant, jagged mountains. Then she drew the creek, a silver ribbon in the valley, and a lone hawk circling in the sky. She lost herself in the simple scratch of pencil on paper, where her world became lines and shadows. While drawing, she was not the unmarried daughter, the practical sister, or the woman no one ever chose. She was simply herself, wonderfully and completely free. An hour passed by in a blur. She was so absorbed she did not hear the approaching horse. Lydia's head snapped up, her hand instinctively going to the small knife hidden in her boot. A rider was moving toward her from the east with a slow, easy gait. The sun behind him made him a dark silhouette. She stood, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. The rider slowed to a walk and stopped at the creek's edge. The first thing she noticed was that he was very tall. He was tall and lean, with the tough build of a man who worked hard and lived even harder. His hat was pulled low, shadowing his features, but she knew he was not one of her father's men. "Morning," he said, his voice low and rough, like worn river stones. Lydia kept her hand near her weapon. "You are on Mercer land," she said firmly. "My?" He pushed his hat back, and she finally saw his face clearly. He was not handsome in the same way Silas Cartwright was, with his polished smile and refined looks. This man's face was all angles and weather, with sun-browned skin, faint scars, and unforgettable eyes. His eyes were the color of good whiskey, and they held a deep, quiet intensity that made her breath catch. It felt as if he could see right through her, to the person she kept carefully hidden. "I'm riding the boundary for the Cartwrights," he said. Guess I crossed over without realizing. The boundary is a quarter-mile east, she told him. The old lightning struck pine marks it. I'll remember that, he said, but he did not leave. Instead, his gaze dropped to the sketchbook she held like a shield. You draw? The question startled her. Yes, a little. May I see, he asked. No, she replied, much too sharply. I mean, they are just rough sketches. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. It softened the harsh angles and warmed his eyes, revealing a gentle nature underneath his rough exterior. I did not mean to intrude. I will be on my way. He touched the brim of his hat and turned his horse to leave. Wait, Lydia heard herself say suddenly. Who are you? He looked back over his shoulder, a half smile on his lips. Name's Rowan, Rowan Hale. I work for the Cartwrights. Something flickered in his expression then. Maybe recognition, or something else she could not name. I know who you are, Miss Mercer, he said softly. Then he was riding away into the golden morning light. He left Lydia standing by the creek, her heart pounding, and the sketchbook still pressed against her chest. Lydia felt completely different on the ride home. The air itself seemed to crackle with a new kind of energy. She could not stop thinking about the man she had just met. He had looked right at her, as if she were someone who truly mattered. It was a wonderful but dangerous thought that she pushed away. When she finally reached the barn, the entire property was in chaos. Servants rushed back and forth while her mother shouted orders like a general. And there, tied to the post, were 3 magnificent horses she had never seen before. The Cartwrights had arrived early. Lydia's heart sank. She was covered in trail dust, her hair a mess. A stubborn smudge of pencil lead was stuck on her cheek. Lydia! Her mother appeared, her face white with fury. Where have you been? The Cartwrights arrived an hour ago. I am sorry, Mother, I lost track of time. Her mother struggled for composure. Get inside, dinner is in 4 hours and you are a mess. Lydia hurried past her mother with her head down. The house was transformed with flowers and the good china set out for the first time in years. It looked like a wedding was about to happen. She tried to slip upstairs quietly. There you are. Elena's door flew open, pulling Lydia into a cloud of perfume. Her sister pulled her into the bedroom, shutting the door with a click. I have been dying to talk to you, Elena said, her eyes bright with excitement. Did you see them? They brought everyone, just like Father said. And Lydia, the men are so handsome, especially Silas. Lydia only thought of the man with the kind, whiskey-colored eyes. I might have noticed 1 or 2, Lydia admitted. I knew it. Elena clapped her hands. Oh, tonight is going to be the most wonderful night. Everything is finally falling into place, she said, twirling around her room. Elena was already halfway dressed, her corset laced tight. Her golden hair was piled high in perfect curls and ribbons. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, the kind who always gets the prince. Are you truly happy, Elena? The question slipped out before Lydia could stop it. Elena stopped twirling, her expression changing. Of course I am happy. Why would you ask? Of course, but is he a kind man? Does he make you laugh? Elena's voice went flat. He's rich and handsome, Lydia. What else is there? Love, Lydia thought, but she didn't dare say it out loud. Some things were better left unsaid. I should go and get ready. Elena forced a small smile. Mother is furious as usual. You should go. And please, try to enjoy yourself tonight. This is important for us. Lydia just nodded and slipped out of the room, feeling the weight of her sister's words. In front of her own mirror, Lydia studied her reflection in the blue dress. She had given up on being beautiful long ago. She just aimed for acceptable. The color was good, making her gray eyes look almost silver in the light. The cut was modest, and her hair was neatly pinned up for once. Presentable, she thought to herself. That would have to be enough. She went downstairs just as the setting sun filled the windows with golden light. The dining room had been transformed with countless candles and flowers. The guests were already gathered, and she saw her father right away. He looked uncomfortable talking to a broad-shouldered older gentleman. It had to be Jacob Cartwright, the patriarch of the family. He had the commanding air of a man who was used to being obeyed. Beside him stood Margaret Cartwright, his wife, dressed in shimmering silk. She was beautiful in a cold, polished way, with a practiced smile and calculating eyes. And then she saw Silas standing in the center of it all. He was tall and classically handsome, like a statue carved from marble. He held Elena by the waist, showing her off like a newly won prize. Elena's laugh rang out, but it sounded a bit too bright to be genuine. "Miss Mercer." The low, familiar voice startled her. She turned to see Rowan Hale. He was cleaned up, wearing a simple dark suit instead of his dusty work clothes. His hair was combed back, but his whiskey gold eyes were just the same. They seemed to see everything. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, "I did not expect to see you at the party." "The Cartwrights invite their senior staff," he explained. "I'm the head wrangler." Lydia was very aware of Rowan standing so close, smelling of soap and leather. She saw the candlelight, catching the amber flecks in his eyes. "You look very nice," he said. She blushed and replied, "You too." He smiled. "We cowboys do bathe once in a while, you know." Despite herself, Lydia let out a small laugh, a sound she quickly muffled. But it was enough to get the attention of Silas Cartwright. He crossed the room like a man who owned everything in sight. "Rowan," he said, before his cold eyes landed on Lydia. He sized her up in an instant. "Ah, the practical Mercer daughter." The words stung, even though she knew they were true in his world. To men like Silas, Elena was beautiful, and Lydia was just useful. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Cartwright," she said, offering her hand. He barely brushed her fingers with his. "Elena has told me about you." His smile was cold. "She says you are skilled with household accounts. Perhaps after we are married, you can help my mother with the ranch's books." The offer was not a question, and it was certainly not a compliment. It was a clear look at the future Silas had planned for her. She would be little more than a servant in her own sister's new home. "That is very kind of you," Lydia managed to say through a tight smile. Silas then turned to Rowan, his entire manner becoming harder. "Make sure the horses are secured for the night," he commanded. As he walked away, Lydia felt the heavy weight of her future settling in. Rowan's voice was a low whisper. "He is not what he seems." His expression was dark and troubled, but the dinner bell rang. He gave her a slight shake of his head, a warning to stay quiet. Then he left her standing alone, her heart pounding with questions. Dinner felt like it lasted for an eternity. She barely tasted the food, and the laughter around her sounded hollow. She sat far from the head of the table, watching Elena and Silas. Mrs. Cartwright spent the meal describing renovations for when Elena moved in. The house felt less like a home and more like a gilded prison. Her father was talking business with Jacob Cartwright about cattle and land. Lydia could see the tension dear father tried to hide. Meanwhile, Silas was putting on a perfect show for Elena. His charm was a performance, his touch possessive. The sight of it made Lydia's stomach turn, but Elena just smiled through it, looking perfect and unreachable. Lydia's gaze drifted to the far end of the table where Rowan sat. He was quiet, but she had caught him watching her. His warning, "He's not what he seems," echoed in her head. Finally, dinner ended and the party moved to the parlor. A fiddle started a waltz, and Silas led Elena to dance. The guests applauded for the picture-perfect couple. They looked beautiful, Lydia thought. But beautiful is not happy. Feeling trapped, she slipped out the back door into the night. The cool air and bright stars were a welcome relief. "Couldn't take it anymore either?" a voice asked. She turned to find Rowan leaning against the house. A small cigarette glowed in the dark between his fingers. "It was stifling in there," she admitted. "That it was," he agreed. He blew smoke toward the sky. "Your sister seems happy." "Does she?" Lydia's reply was sharp and full of doubt. He studied her face for a moment. "You do not think so?" Elena was only ever taught what happiness is supposed to look like. Rowan nodded slowly, as if he already knew. "And you?" he asked softly. "Do you know what happy looks like?" No one had ever asked her that before. She was stunned. "I know what free looks like," she said at last, "and I think that might be the same thing." He smiled then, a full, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You see things differently, Miss Mercer." Rowan's voice was soft. "Please call me Lydia." "Miss Mercer is my mother," she explained. He smiled. "Lydia, then." He paused for a moment. "You left something by the creek this morning." He pulled an object from his jacket, and Lydia's heart stopped. It was her sketchbook. She had dropped it when she ran from him earlier, too flustered to even notice. Now he had it in his hands. He had seen all her private drawings and dreams. "You looked inside," she stated flatly. "I did," he admitted. "You are very talented, Lydia. You capture the real beauty of this land, not just its harsh side." "They are just some sketches," she said, reaching for it. He held it back for a moment. "They are much more than that," he said gently. "They are full of hope. Please give it back, Mr. Hale." He just smiled. "If I am calling you Lydia, then you must call me Rowan." To her own complete surprise, Lydia laughed. "You are a very strange man," she said. "So I have been told." He finally handed her the book. As he did, their fingers brushed against each other. A small spark shot right through her. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, both exciting and a little scary. "Thank you for returning it," she whispered. He nodded. "Thank you for showing me." He put out his cigarette. "I should go, but Lydia," his tone suddenly changed. "Be careful in this house. Be careful who you put your trust in." And just like that, he was gone. He slipped back inside, leaving her all alone under the big Montana sky. His strange warning echoed in her mind all night. She could not sleep at all. Long after the Cartwrights had left, she lay awake, thinking about the evening. She remembered the cold, possessive way Silas had looked at her sister, Elena. She thought of his mother, describing Elena's tightly planned and controlled future. Then she remembered how Rowan had looked at her, as if he was the first person to truly see her. His warning just kept repeating in her mind. What could he possibly mean? Why would a simple ranch hand risk telling her, a total stranger, such a thing? The questions spun in her head over and over until the sun started to rise. Lydia got dressed and quietly left the house before dawn. She needed to go for a ride. She needed to clear her head and try to figure things out. And she needed to see Rowan again. The thought was dangerous and completely forbidden, but she also knew it was true. At dawn, Lydia rode north to the creek. The mountains were pink in the cold air. She was drawn to the man with whiskey eyes. For once, she was not doing as she was told. She was doing what she wanted, a dangerous act. The creek was empty, its water shimmering. She dismounted, her heart pounding with hope. He was not there, of course not, she thought. He was a working man, not a lovesick fool. She was the fool. The thought made her laugh. This was all from one single conversation. She felt like a character from a cheap novel. "You are early." The voice startled her. Rowan appeared from the willows leading his horse. He smiled. "I could say the same to you." "I'm checking the boundary," he said, stopping nearby. She saw the gold in his eyes. "And your excuse?" "My fence line," she lied. "That is that way." "I know," he smiled. "Call me Rowan." She smiled back. "Rowan, I came to sketch." "Mind if I watch?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Don't you have work?" "My work can wait." "I have been thinking about your drawings," he said. Her stomach tightened. "The one of the horse?" "Running free," he said, "like it never knew a possum." "Was that from life or just your imagination?" "Both," she said. "I have seen the wild herd here." "And you want to be one of them?" he asked. She whispered, "Is it wrong to want to be free?" "No," he said gently. "Only pretending is wrong." "I don't want it." They sat by the creek, listening to the morning birds. The silence between them was surprisingly peaceful, not awkward at all. "Tell me about yourself," Lydia finally said. "Where are you from? And how did you come to work for the Cartwrights?" Rowan picked up a smooth stone. "It is a long story." He glanced at her. "I have time," she insisted. He sighed and began. "I was born in a small town in Texas called Redemption. My father was a rancher, and my mother was a teacher. We had a good life. But then the Civil War came. I was 12 years old when it ended. I saw our whole world turn to ash." He threw the stone into the creek. "My father did not return. My mother died of a fever the next winter. I spent the next 10 years just learning how to survive." "I'm so sorry," Lydia said softly, hearing the old pain in his voice. "5 years ago, I ended up in Montana. The Cartwrights needed help. I was looking for a place to stop running. Are you happy here?" "The work is honest, and old Jacob is a fair man," he said. "But Silas," he paused. "Silas is another matter entirely." "What do you mean?" Lydia pressed. "What do you know about him?" Rowan's eyes were serious. He was engaged 2 times before this. Both of his fiancées died before the wedding. Lydia was stunned. Died how? The first one drowned in the river, supposedly caught in the current. The second one fell from her horse during a storm and broke her neck. Both were ruled accidents. In both times, Silas collected a large dowry. That is horrible. It's not proof, Rowan agreed, but I have watched him. For 5 long years, I have seen the man he is when no one is looking. He treats people poorly, and his eyes go cold when he is crossed. He took her hand, his grip firm. Your sister is in real danger. Oh, and if he has his way, you are next in line. Lydia's mind reeled, picturing Silas's charming but empty smile. The convenient job offer suddenly made perfect, terrible sense. Why are you telling me this? She asked. You are risking everything. Her hand tightened in his. Because some things are more important than a job, he said, pausing. He struggled for a moment. Because I saw you by the creek yesterday, drawing the mountains. I knew you and your sister deserve better than what he has planned. How can I help? Lydia's voice was a whisper. My father already said yes. The wedding is this spring. Elena thinks she is happy. Then watch him, Rowan urged. Listen to everything he does and says. And when it is time, he let go of her hand. His eyes held hers. When the time comes, you must be ready to run. Before she could answer, she heard hoofbeats. The sound shattered the quiet morning. They jumped apart, breaking the spell between them. A rider appeared on the ridge above, a dark shape against the morning sun. Lydia knew who it was. She recognized the stiff posture and the expensive clothes. It was Silas Cartwright. Rowan, Silas's sharp voice echoed across the valley. I have been looking for you. We are leaving early. Father wants the cattle drive started by noon. Rowan's voice turned cold and respectful. Yes, sir. All the warmth was gone. I was checking the southern fence line. Silas sneered. I can see that. His gaze shifted to Lydia, a darkness flickering in his eyes. Miss Mercer, what a surprise to see you here. I was checking our fences, Lydia said, her voice surprisingly steady. The storm caused some damage. How responsible of you, Silas replied with a cold smile. You should head home. Your mother will be worried. It was not a suggestion. It was an order. She felt the power behind his polite words. He simply assumed she would obey. Of course. She got on her horse with practiced skill. She rode past Silas without looking at him, but she could feel his stare on her back the entire way. When she finally glanced back, she saw Rowan watching her go, his face blank, his hands in tight fists. The cattle drive. She had completely forgotten. Her father had told her about it days ago. It was a week-long trip moving the Cartwright cattle to their winter pasture. Both of their families had been invited, a gesture to seal the new alliance. A week of traveling together, eating together, and sleeping under the stars. A week watching Elena with Silas. A week wondering what was behind his smile. And a week with Rowan. A shiver ran down her spine. When Lydia finally arrived home, the house was in complete chaos. Her mother was ordering servants to pack supplies. Her father was choosing horses with the ranch hands. And Elena was floating through the rooms, bursting with excitement. Isn't this wonderful? Elena cried, grabbing Lydia's hands. An entire week on the trail. Silas told me we will see parts of Montana that most people never get to see. Wild, untouched country. Can you just imagine? Oh, Lydia could imagine it. The wild country and all the dangers that waited for them there. She could picture Silas watching, his true nature hidden behind that perfect charm. It sounds wonderful, Lydia said cautiously. Are you excited? I'm thrilled, Elena's eyes sparkled. It is the adventure of a lifetime, and you have to come with us. Elena continued, Father insisted you join us. He said he needs you to manage the accounts for the drive. She laughed. You know how terrible the men are with numbers. But I think he just does not want you left here alone. He worries about you. We all do. Lydia forced a smile. Of course I will come. I would not miss it. But as she went to her room to pack, her mind was racing. Why had her father insisted? Was it really about the accounts, or was there something more? Had he noticed the truth about Silas, or was he just handing her over to the Cartwright family? She had no way of knowing. All she could do was watch, listen, and be prepared, just as Rowan had warned her. The drive began at noon with 200 head of cattle and a dozen experienced cowboys. A small caravan of wagons followed, carrying supplies and the two families. Elena rode with Mrs. Cartwright in a covered wagon, protected from the dust and the sun. She looked out the window like a princess. But when Lydia was offered a spot, she refused. "I would rather ride," she said firmly. "I can be more useful on my horse." Her mother disapproved but did not argue. So Lydia rode her horse, Tempest, beside the herd. Her sketchbook was safe in her saddlebag, her eyes searching the wild horizon. The mountains stood around them like giants, their peaks dusted with the first snow. Below, the valley was a sea of gold and rust as the autumn grass swayed in the wind. A hawk circled high above, and its freedom made Lydia's heart ache with longing. She tried hard not to search for Rowan or to notice him as he rode past shouting orders. He moved with the easy grace of a man born to ride. She fought the spark she felt each time they made eye contact. But through the dust and chaos of the drive, she failed every single time. By the first evening, Lydia's body was exhausted, but her spirit felt electric. They made camp in a clearing by a stream, protected from the wind by tall pine trees. Fires were lit, and the smell of dinner soon filled the air. The Cartwright's cook, Dutch, made a wonderful meal, but Lydia noticed the seating arrangements were very specific. The two families ate at special tables, while the ranch hands gathered around the main fire. It was a clear separation, and Silas made a huge show of waiting on Elena. He made sure she was comfortable and tended to her every need, playing the part of a perfect gentleman, a devoted fiancé. But Lydia watched Silas closely, and she started to see the man Rowan had warned her about. She saw the way his smile never reached his eyes. She noticed the way his hand would tighten on Elena's arm when she disagreed with him. She even saw him glance at other women. It was a quick, sizing up look when he thought no one was watching. Elena either did not notice or chose to ignore it. Later, Lydia walked to the edge of the camp, away from the firelight. The stars were bright above her. She breathed in the cold night air, trying to settle her unease. "It's beautiful, is not it?" a voice said. She did not need to turn around. She knew his footsteps. "The stars?" she asked as Rowan came to stand beside hers. "The stars, the mountains, all of it." He stood close, and she could feel his warmth. "This is why I stay." Lydia replied, "I thought you stayed because you were tired of running." "That too," he admitted. After a quiet moment, he asked, "How are you doing?" "I am fine," she lied, feeling it was safer that way. "I am watching him, paying attention, just like you said." "And what are you seeing?" Rowan asked. Lydia finally turned to look at him in the dim starlight. His face was hard to read, but his eyes held a look that made her heart race. "I see a man who is a very good actor," smiled, he said, "and I see a sister who is very good at believing his act." Rowan nodded. "That is about right." "What happened to the other women?" Lydia asked. "Were their deaths really accidents?" "I cannot say for sure," he said, then hesitated. "But I have my doubts. The first was named Catherine. She was 17 and terrified of water. Everyone knew it. She was so scared she needed someone with her just to take a bath. Yet they said she went swimming alone at night. And she drowned." Or a chill went through Lydia. The second was Margaret. She was 20 years old. She was an amazing horse rider, had been since she was 3. They claimed her horse got spooked and threw her. But I saw that horse later. It was the calmest animal in the stable. Nothing scared that horse. "Then why has no one said anything?" Lydia demanded. "Said what? To who?" Rowan's voice was bitter. "The Cartwright family has judges and sheriffs in their pocket. Who would believe a wrangler over them? The richest, most powerful family in all of Montana?" Something inside Lydia grew firm and resolute. "I would," she said, looking him in the eye. "I believe you." Rowan stared back, his expression softening. "You are different, Lydia Mercer," he said. "Different from anyone I have ever met." He smiled then, a real smile that changed his whole face. "I am not sure if that is a good thing or a bad thing." "Come with me tomorrow," he offered. "I have something I need to show you. It is a hidden spring about an hour from here. The herd will be fine, and your father will not notice you are gone." It was a reckless, dangerous idea, but a perfect opportunity to sketch. "I'll come," she said. They slipped away together at dawn. They both made up excuses, one about sketching and the other about scouting. No one suspected a thing as they rode north into the beautiful wild country. The main trail soon vanished, leaving only animal paths through the trees. The air grew crisp with the smell of pine, right as they found a clearing that took her breath away. The hidden spring was a perfect jewel set in a crown of stone. Clear, cold water, an impossible blue, bubbled up from the ground. It pooled beautifully before spilling over the rocks into a creek below. Wildflowers bloomed along its edges, guarded by peaks that seemed to touch the sky. "Oh, Rowan," Lydia whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "I found this place years ago," he said quietly. "I've never shown it to anyone else." She understood the gift he was offering her. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you see the world the I do so," he said, helping her down from her horse. He struggled for a moment, then looked her in the eyes. "It is because I have not been able to stop thinking about you." Lydia's heart was pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. He stepped back. "I know this is impossible. I am only a ranch hand. And you are a Mercer. Your family has plans for you. I do not care about their plans." The words burst out of her, fierce and true. "I never have. They just want me to be useful and then fade away. They want to hand me over to the Cartwrights like a piece of luggage." Her voice broke when she thought of being trapped with a man like Silas. "I will not do it," she vowed. "Then do not," Rowan urged, taking her hands. "Do not let them decide your life for you. You deserve to be seen, Lydia. You deserve to be loved for exactly who you are." "But who am I?" she whispered. "I am not delicate or refined. I ride horses and I draw mountains." "What man would ever want that?" she asked quietly. He simply said, "I would." Lydia just stared, unable to breathe as her heart cracked wide open. "Do not say things you do not mean," she managed to say. He replied, "I have never meant anything more." He lifted her hand to his lips and gently kissed her knuckles. "I know this is happening fast, Lydia, but I feel like my whole life was leading to you." Tears streamed down her face, but she did not mind. "Rowan, I do not know how to love someone. I have never done this before." "Neither have I," he said, his gentle smile lighting up his face. "But I would like to learn how with you." She suddenly kissed him. It was a pure, wild impulse, the most reckless thing she had ever done. And as he kissed her back, it felt absolutely perfect. He pulled her in close, and she felt the strong beat of his heart. He held her like she was something precious that needed to be protected. When they finally pulled away, they were both breathing hard. "Well," Rowan said in a rough voice, "I was not expecting that." "Neither was I," she laughed, a joyful, shaky sound. "I have never done that." "I am glad," he said, tucking her hair behind her ear. "Only for the cowboys who tell me I deserve to be loved." They spent the next hour talking more openly than she ever had with anyone. Rowan told her about his dream of owning his own land. Lydia told him about her secret hope that her drawings could be valuable to someone. Their conversation then turned to Elena and the danger of marrying Silas. Rowan described the small cruelties he had seen from the man. "We have to protect Elena," Lydia stated. "She cannot marry him." "That will not be easy," Rowan warned. "Elena seems to love him." "She loves the idea of him," Lydia replied. "A handsome prince, not the real person." "Do you think she will believe you?" Rowan asked softly. Lydia thought of her sister's optimism. "I do not know, but I have to try." They returned to camp just as the sun was setting. Lydia made an excuse that she was busy sketching a beautiful view. Her mother looked suspicious but stayed quiet, and her father was distracted. But Silas noticed. She could feel his intense gaze on her. When she looked up, he was watching her with a dark, unreadable expression. His handsome face hid a cold, calculating mind. He knows, she thought, but instead of feeling scared, she felt angry. How dare he watch her like that? She was not a piece of property he could control. She met his gaze, then deliberately turned away in a small act of defiance. That night, Lydia lay awake, her mind racing. The kiss with Rowan had changed everything. She was no longer just a worried sister watching from the sidelines. Now she was a woman falling for a man with nothing but a good name. Her parents would be furious. Society would judge them. A Mercer woman choosing a simple ranch hand was scandalous. But it was exactly what her heart wanted. First, though, she had to save Elena. The days on the cattle drive blurred into one filled with stolen moments with Rowan. They could not show their feelings openly, but they found small ways. A brief touch of their hands, a meaningful glance across the campfire. A few whispered words, lost in the noise of 200 cattle. As Lydia watched Silas, she saw his true nature more clearly. She saw his quick temper and his disrespect for the ranch hands. And she saw the cold, possessive way he looked at her sister, Elena. Then, on the third day of the drive, he turned that cold gaze on her. Silas rode up beside her, his smile a little too wide. "You ride well, Miss Mercer." "Please, call me Silas." He looked her up and down, making her deeply uncomfortable. "Most women would stay in the wagon. You are not afraid of hard work." "I grew up on a ranch," she said flatly. "My mother was right," he said. "You are practical, useful, a valuable quality." The word useful sent a chill down her spine. He leaned in closer. "I have been thinking about the future and how you might fit into it." His eyes locked on hers. "Elena is beautiful, but beauty does not last. She will be a perfect hostess, but she will not be useful." "Not useful in the way you would be," he finished. Lydia's blood ran cold. He said, his voice calm yet terrifying, "I am just saying that once Elena and I are married, there will be an important place for you. You could manage our accounts. You would be comfortable, protected, and part of our family." "And what would I have to give in return?" Lydia asked, her heart pounding. Silas simply gave a chilling smile and rode away, leaving her stunned. She was left trembling with horror. That night, she told Rowan everything. They met in the shadows where Rowan listened, his expression growing grim. "He is already making plans," Rowan said when she finished. "He hasn't even married your sister, yet he is planning how to control you." "He sees us as property," Lydia said bitterly, "not as people." "We have to get you both out of this," Rowan said, his hands clenched into fists. "But how? The engagement is final. Elena believes she is in love." "Then we must make her see the truth," Rowan declared fiercely. "We will find evidence to show her what kind of man he really is." Lydia looked at him, confused. "Why are you risking everything for my sister and me?" "You barely even know us, Rowan." He was quiet for a moment, looking at the stars above. "I am tired of watching powerful men hurt good people. I am tired of doing nothing." He turned to her, his eyes full of a fierce tenderness. "And also because I love you, Lydia. I know it is sudden, but I do." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you too," she whispered back. He pulled her into his arms and held her close against him. They stood together in the darkness, finding courage in each other. "We will get through this together. I promise," he murmured. And Lydia believed him. On the fifth night of the drive, the weather took a turn. Heavy, dark clouds rolled in, and the air crackled with an approaching storm. The cattle grew anxious, and even the horses seemed on edge. They tossed their heads and stamped their feet nervously. "A canyon is about 2 miles east," Jacob Cartwright announced. "We will make camp there." The crew worked quickly, and they were settled just as the rain began to fall. Everyone took shelter in the deep canyon. The cattle huddled together in a natural pen. The people hid under tents and rocky ledges. At midnight, the storm crashed down. Lydia had never seen anything like it. Blinding lightning turned the night into day. Thunder boomed through the canyon like an angry giant. The rain was a solid wall of water. You could not see a thing. And then it happened. The stampede. One moment the cattle were restless. The next, lightning struck a tree near their pen. 200 terrified animals exploded in a flood of panic. The sound was a complete nightmare. Hooves hammered on stone, men yelled, and horses screamed. The whole ground shook with the force. Lydia felt a vibration deep in her bones. She scrambled out of her tent into the chaos. In the flashes of light, she saw cattle pouring out of the canyon. The trail hands were trying to stop them, but they could not turn the herd. Then she saw something that made her blood run cold. It was Elena. Her wagon was overturned, and her sister was on the ground, struggling. She was right in the path of the panicked animals. Lydia did not think. She just ran. Thick mud grabbed at her boots. She screamed, but the thunder swallowed the sound. She ran harder than ever. She ran straight toward her sister in the wall of death. Lydia reached Elena just as the first cattle appeared. She grabbed her sister's arm and pulled with every ounce of her strength. Somehow they were moving, stumbling and falling through the mud as the herd thundered past. The animals were so close she could feel their heat. They finally reached the safety of the canyon wall. They pressed themselves flat against the cold, wet rock. They watched the river of animals pour by. Elena was screaming, a high, thin sound of pure terror that was lost in the storm. Then a rider cut through the chaos. It was Rowan. He was riding directly against the stampede. His face was a mask of determination. His eyes were locked right on Lydia and Elena. A group of panicked cattle suddenly turned toward them. Rowan put himself and his horse between them and the danger. The impact was brutal. Lydia saw the cattle slam into his horse and Rowan was thrown from the saddle. He hit the ground hard and lay completely still. "Rowan!" Lydia screamed, running to his side. She dropped to her knees beside his motionless body. Then he groaned and his eyes slowly opened. He looked up at her through the pouring rain. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No," she cried. "But you?" She frantically checked him for injuries. "You could have been killed." He gave a weak smile. "Worth it." He passed out in her arms. The rest of the night was a blur of organized chaos. The storm finally ended. The cattle were gathered. Rowan had 2 broken ribs, but he would live. Elena was bruised and shaken, but she was unharmed. The wagon was lost, but no lives were. That was all that mattered. In the gray dawn, Lydia noticed something was wrong. Silas Cartwright had been missing during the entire ordeal. "Where were you?" Elena asked when he finally showed up. He looked clean and dry. "Lydia saved me. I could have died, but you weren't there." "I was saving the supply wagons," Silas said with a smooth voice. "We couldn't afford to lose them." "More important than me?" "Of course not, darling." He smiled, but his eyes were ice cold. "I knew you were safe. Your sister is very resourceful." Lydia watched Elena's face. She saw a flash of doubt in her sister's eyes as she glanced toward the injured Rowan. Then she looked back at Silas, who was perfectly clean. Lydia saw the first crack in Elena's faith. That tiny crack was a start. The next morning, the canyon was eerily quiet. All Lydia could hear was dripping water. She sat right beside Rowan's makeshift bed. She watched his chest rise and fall with every difficult breath. His face was pale, and his lips were pressed tight, as if fighting pain in his dreams. Lydia couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Rowan. She saw him jump between her and the charging cattle, then fall motionless into the mud. The horrible image played over and over in her mind. "You should get some rest." It was Elena's voice, soft and unsure. Lydia turned and saw her sister in the tent opening. Elena's hair was a mess, and her beautiful clothes were stained with mud. "I can't," Lydia said simply. "Not while he is like this." Elena walked closer. "He saved our lives," Elena whispered, looking at Rowan. "Both of us." "I know," Lydia said. "Why risk everything for 2 women he barely knows?" For the first time in years, Lydia really looked at her sister. Elena's face had changed. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by a raw, uncertain look. "Because that is who he is," Lydia said. "Some men are built to protect, not to possess." A flicker of understanding crossed Elena's eyes. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a shadow fell over the tent entrance. "There you are." Silas's voice was smooth, pretending to be concerned. "Elena, darling, you shouldn't be in here. The injured need to rest." "I was talking to Lydia," Elena said, but her voice faltered. "She saved my life, Silas." "Yes, I heard." His eyes shifted to Lydia, and they were cold and calculating. "Quite the hero. But then, your sister has always been the practical one, hasn't she?" The words were meant to sound like a compliment, but Lydia heard the insult loud and clear. She felt like a useful tool, nothing more. "Where were you?" she asked. The words slipped out. During the stampede, she repeated, "Where were you?" Silas's smile stayed, but his eyes flickered. "I was securing the supply wagons." "The wagons are on the other side of the canyon," Lydia said calmly. "How did you get there without crossing the herd's path?" For a brief second, his composure cracked. Lydia saw pure anger in his eyes before he hit it. His voice turned cold. "I don't like what you are implying, Miss Mercer." "It was a simple question." Elena grabbed her arm. "Lydia, please, not right now." But Lydia had to know. The sight of Rowan, hurt and bleeding, and Silas, spotless, made everything clear. "You were not at the wagons," she said. "You were hiding. While Elena was in danger and Rowan risked his life, you hid in a wagon." You just waited for it all to be over. The tent went completely silent. Silas's face turned pale. From the bed, Lydia heard Rowan begin to move. You have no idea what you are talking about, Silas whispered. Elena's voice was shaky. Silas, tell me she is wrong. Tell me you did not hide from danger. Tell me the truth, Elena demanded, her voice suddenly strong. For the first time, Lydia saw real fear in Silas's eyes as he stared at his fiancée. Things were chaotic, he finally said. I made a choice to protect our valuable supplies. Risk what? Elena asked, her voice cracking. Your comfort? Your own skin? She pulled away from him, her eyes filled with tears. A ranch hand saved me. A man with nothing but integrity. And you, my fiancé, hid from it all. You hid in a wagon while I was screaming for help. You are being too emotional, he said. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in months, she replied. She left the tent, leaving Lydia alone with an exposed and angry Silas. His polite mask was gone, replaced by a raw, ugly expression. He glared at Lydia with pure hatred. You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you have won some kind of prize? I just asked a question. He stepped closer. You have been against me from the very start. I see how you look at me, and how you whisper with that cowboy. I do not know what you mean. Oh, I think you do, he said, his voice low and threatening. I know exactly what you are, Lydia. You are just a jealous sister. You are just trying to destroy what you cannot have. Silas scoffed. The truth is, I saved your family from complete ruin. Without me, your father would have absolutely nothing left. You should be thanking me. I would rather die, she replied firmly. His face twisted in rage and he took a step toward her, but a pained voice from behind stopped him. Do not touch her. Lydia turned. It was Rowan, awake and propped up on one elbow. Though he was in pain, his eyes were blazing with fury. Silas took a hesitant step back. The wrangler speaks, he sneered. The hired help finally speaks up. I am defending the woman I love. Lay a hand on her and you will regret it, Rowan warned, his voice low. The two men locked eyes in a tense, silent standoff. Finally, Silas smirked. We will see about all of that. He turned and walked out, leaving a cold threat hanging in the air. Lydia immediately rushed over to Rowan's side, her hands trembling. You should not have done that. You are seriously hurt. I will rest when you are safe, he said, taking her hand in his. What did I miss? She quickly told him about the entire confrontation. As he listened, his expression grew dark. It is happening, he said. He is losing his control, and that makes him much more dangerous. He will do something desperate very soon. We have to leave. Tonight, we must get you and Elena away from here. Tonight? Your safety is more important. I am not leaving you anywhere near him. But you can barely stand. I will do what is necessary. He pulled her closer to him. To protect you. I love you, Lydia. I have never felt this way before. I will not let that man hurt you. She tearfully nodded her head. I understand. Then you must trust me. Tonight we run. The rest of the long day was filled with a quiet tension. As the cattle drive moved on, everyone could feel that something was terribly wrong. Elena stayed near Lydia, her face pale as she avoided Silas, who was busy with his father. Lydia watched them, her nerves completely frayed. As the sun set, painting the mountains gold, Rowan appeared at her side. He was clearly in pain but stood tall. I spoke to a few hands I trust, he said softly. They will cover for us. They will say we stopped to help an injured horse. By the time they realize we are gone, we will be far away. And then, Lydia asked, there is a small town 30 miles south. It has a telegraph office to wire your father. He can arrange to get you home safely. But what will happen to you? Rowan's expression was firm. I will face what comes, but first I am getting you and Elena out of here. This is the right thing to do. Lydia knew it was true, but her heart ached. Convincing Elena to leave was much easier than Lydia had expected. She found her sister staring at the sunset with empty eyes. I cannot marry him, Elena said, her voice hollow. I thought his cowardice was just one mistake. But there is something deeply wrong with him, is not there? Yes, Lydia said gently. There is. You heard the stories about his past fiancée, did not you? Rowan told me. He is sure their deaths were not accidents. A tear slid down Elena's cheek. Oh, I believe it. I have seen the cold way he looks at people. He talks about his horses and his staff with the exact same tone, like they are objects. Her eyes filled with horror. He would have spoken about me that way. Lydia pulled her into a tight hug. We are leaving tonight. Rowan has a plan. Rowan, Elena pulled back, a new understanding in her eyes. You are in love with him. It was a statement, not a question. Lydia blushed. He may be just a ranch hand, but he risked his life for us. A small smile touched Elena's lips. A man's courage is worth more than all the money in Montana. Do not let anyone ever tell you differently. They waited until the camp was dark and silent under the moon. They moved like shadows to where Rowan waited with 3 saddled horses. Are you ready? He asked. Lydia glanced at her sister's determined face. We are ready. They mounted their horses and rode into the darkness, leaving everything behind. For the first hour, they rode as fast as they could. The moon was bright, casting a silver light on the trail ahead. The moonlight made the landscape feel strange and silent. The only sounds were hoofbeats and the heavy breathing of their horses. Lydia worriedly watched Rowan. He rode hunched over, holding his broken ribs. His face was pale, but his eyes stayed alert, scanning the darkness. When they stopped by a creek, Elena broke the silence. How much farther? 20 miles, Rowan answered, wincing as he got off his horse. He said grimly, and Silas will follow. His pride won't let this go. Then we just have to be faster, Lydia replied, helping Rowan. She insisted he rest. You're not fine, you're running on pure stubbornness. Despite his pain, Rowan managed a small, genuine laugh. You already know me too well, he said with a slight smile. She helped him sit on a rock by the water. Just stay there. But then the unmistakable sound of distant hoofbeats reached them. They all froze, their hearts pounding. They're coming, Elena whispered. How is that possible? Rowan's voice was tight. Silas must have seen us leave. It does not matter how, Lydia said, moving quickly to their horses. What matters is we ride now. Rowan pushed himself up, ignoring the pain. They mounted and galloped away, the moonlit land a blur around them. Lydia's hands were slick on the reins, her heart racing with fear. Elena rode beside her with fierce determination, her hair flying behind her. Rowan led the way, pushing through an agony that would stop most men. The hoofbeats behind them grew louder, closer. Lydia glanced back. She saw 5 riders against the sky, gaining on them with terrible speed. There, Rowan shouted, pointing ahead. The canyon! We can lose them in there! A dark canyon opened before them, and they plunged inside without a second thought. The high rock walls closed in around them like the jaws of a beast. The path twisted and narrowed, making the footing dangerous for the horses. This treacherous ground forced their pursuers to slow down, buying them precious time. Rowan suddenly stopped at a fork in the path. Lydia, Elena, take the left trail. It leads to a hidden valley. Keep riding to town. What about you? Lydia demanded, with fear. I'll lead them off, he said. Buy you time to escape. No, Lydia grabbed his arm. I am not leaving you here. Lydia, you're injured, he pleaded. If I don't do this, they will catch all of us. His eyes burned into hers. This is the only way. Please, let me protect you. He's right, Lydia. Lena's voice cut in, firm and quiet. We have to go now. Lydia saw the fear in her sister's eyes and knew it was true. She looked back at Rowan, the man who had shown her what love really felt like. If you die, she whispered, her voice breaking, I will never forgive you. Then I suppose I cannot die, he said, giving her a quick, hard kiss. I'll find you, I promise. And just like that, he was gone, disappearing down the dark passage. Lydia's heart screamed to follow him, but Elena was already moving. She pulled Lydia's horse down the left path, leaving Lydia no choice but to go. They rode in a terrible silence, the sound of hooves drowning out everything else. The canyon opened into a hidden moonlit valley, just like he had promised. It was beautiful and peaceful, a stark contrast to the terror in her heart. We keep moving, Elena said, her voice surprisingly steady. We find help. Lydia could only nod, praying that Rowan knew what he was doing. She let her horse carry her onward, trying to numb her racing thoughts. But inside, she was crying out for the man she loved, the man risking his life for her. Please be safe, she thought. Please do not let me lose you now. After a night that felt like forever, dawn revealed a small town ahead. They had made it, though their horses were exhausted and their bodies ached. The telegraph office was a small wooden building in the center of town. Lydia slid from her saddle, her legs trembling with fatigue. Inside, an old man with ink-stained fingers looked up from his desk. "Can I help you, miss?" he asked. "I need to send a message to Helena." "To the sheriff and to William Mercer. It will cost $2, he said, sliding a form to her. With shaking hands, Lydia wrote everything down. The danger, the escape. She begged the sheriff to find Rowan and to arrest Silas for his terrible crimes. She did not know if anyone would believe her, but she had to try. She had to take the chance. Elena was waiting outside the telegraph office, looking pale but determined. "It is sent," Lydia said. They found a small hotel room to wait, their anxiety growing with every passing moment. Lydia sat by the window, which overlooked the town's dusty main street. She watched every rider that passed, desperately hoping one of them would be Rowan. The long afternoon stretched into evening, and still there was no sign of him. "He will come," Elena said, trying to comfort her sister. He gave his word. But Lydia's mind raced with terrible possibilities. Elena squeezed her hand, urging her to have faith. He was strong and clever, but fear was a cold knot in Lydia's stomach. Then, in the fading light, she finally saw him. He was slowly leading his horse down the street. He looked terrible, with a torn shirt and a bloodied face, barely able to walk. He was leaning like a broken fence post. But he was alive. Against all odds, he was alive. In a flash, Lydia was out of the room and running down the stairs. She burst out of the hall and ran to him, not caring who was watching. She caught him in her arms just as he collapsed, holding him with surprising strength. "You are alive," she sobbed into his shoulder. "I promised," he whispered, his voice raspy. He explained that his riders had led Silas's men on a wild chase through the rocks. "Ellis saw me fall," he coughed. "He thought I was finished, so he just left me there." "We need a doctor," she said urgently. He touched her face and replied, "I just need you." They got him to the hotel and a doctor was called to treat his serious wounds. He had broken ribs, and one was dangerously close to his lung. The doctor worked all night. The man grumbled about foolish men, but Lydia never left Rowan's side. She held his hand, whispering words of love, her hope willing him to live. And he did, because Rowan Hale always kept his promises. The sheriff and his men arrived the next morning. They listened to Lydia's story with grim faces, their anger growing. They rode out immediately, and after 3 long days, they found Silas and his men. Silas Cartwright was arrested for the murders of his previous fiancées, Catherine and Margaret. Once the investigation began, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Servants and ranch hands, once paid to be silent, finally came forward to tell the truth. Faced with total ruin, his father, Jacob Cartwright, did what powerful men have always done. He completely disowned his son, claiming he knew nothing of the horrible crimes. Silas's father used his vast fortune to salvage the family name, but it was no use. Silas could not escape justice and was held in prison, with a trial set for the spring. His famous charm meant nothing behind iron bars, while Lydia stayed faithfully by Rowan's side. Rowan's recovery was slow, marked by small victories like sitting up or walking across the room. Lydia celebrated every small step forward, her heart filling with hope. A week later, her father, William Mercer, arrived, his face etched with worry. He was overwhelmed with relief to see his daughters safe and listen to their story. His face showed shock, then anger, and finally deep regret. "I should have known," he said sadly. "None of us knew the truth," Elena reassured him. Silas hid his true nature from everyone. William then looked over at Rowan, the man recovering in bed who had saved them. He had risked it all for a woman he barely knew. "How can I ever repay you?" William asked. "I do not want payment," Rowan replied. "I only want your blessing to marry Lydia." Rowan held Lydia's hand. "I have no land or money to offer her," he admitted. "But I love her more than anything in this world, Mr. Mercer. I will spend the rest of my life making her happy." A long silence filled the room. Lydia's heart pounded as she watched her father, waiting for his answer. Then her father did something she rarely saw him do. He smiled. "You saved both of my girls," he said. "You brought a monster to justice. You risked your own life to protect them." His eyes softened with admiration. "A man like that is more than worthy of my blessing." But then her mother spoke. Martha Mercer stood in the doorway, her face pale. "He is a nobody. You cannot approve this." "I can and I do," William stated firmly. "This man has more honor in his little finger than Silas had in his whole body. Wealth means nothing when a man's heart is rotten." He gave his wife a hard look that Lydia had never seen before. "I nearly lost our daughters because I chose wealth over character. I will not make that mistake again." Martha's mouth opened, but no words came out. She was completely speechless. "Thank you, sir," Rowan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will not let you down." William shook his hand. "Welcome to the family, son." Tears of joy streamed down Lydia's face. She looked at Rowan, the kind man who had noticed her when no one else did. He had chosen her, the quiet one with the sketchbook, and in his eyes she saw her future, reflected in his whiskey-colored eyes. Life in Montana was never easy, but for the first time Lydia Mercer believed in a happy ending she never thought possible. And that belief was worth more than all the gold in the territory. After Silas's arrest, everything began to change at the Mercer household. The once quiet and tense home started to feel different, a change Lydia welcomed. Her mother still showed disapproval of Rowan, but her complaints had lost their sharp edge. Lydia's father, William, had made his support clear, which quieted most of the criticism. Rowan's recovery was slow, and his stubbornness tested Lydia's patience. He hated being idle and pushed himself to work before the doctor gave him permission. He would try to walk or help on the ranch long before he was truly ready. "You'll hurt yourself if you don't rest," Lydia warned him one morning. She found him in the barn, carefully brushing his horse. "I've rested for 3 weeks," he said. "A man gets tired of staring at a ceiling. I've counted all 47 knots in the wood, even gave them names." Lydia laughed, a sound that felt new and wonderful to her. She had been laughing more lately, feeling a tightness inside her finally release. "The doctor says you need another 2 weeks of rest," she told him gently. "Light work?" Rowan scoffed. "I only know one way to work, and that's hard." "Then you'll learn a new way," she said, taking the brush from his hand. "I didn't go through all that trouble just to watch you be stubborn." "Technically," he teased, "I was the one who saved you." "Details," she smiled. "Now tell me how you really feel. No more lies." He looked into her eyes and finally let his guard down. "My ribs ache and my shoulder feels like it's on fire sometimes." He gave her a small, crooked smile. "It hurts. But I'm alive, and I'm here with you. That means I'm winning." "You are so far ahead," she whispered, kissing him softly. They stood together, surrounded by the scent of hay and horses. Outside, the winter wind blew, but inside the barn, they were safe. "I've been thinking about something," Rowan said, holding her close. Rowan pulled back to look at her, his face serious. "Your father's blessing is not a plan. I need to figure out how I am going to support you and build a life for us. We will figure it out together," she promised. He moved to the barn door and looked out. "There is a piece of land about 15 miles west of here, the old Larsson spread." Lydia nodded slowly. "I know of it. The place has been abandoned for years." "That is the one," Rowan confirmed. "I rode out there last week to see what was left. The house is still standing and just needs work, but its bones are good. The barn is partly collapsed, but that is fixable. And the land itself," his eyes lit up. "The land is beautiful, Lydia. It has rolling hills and a creek. It is about 300 acres, but it is enough. It is enough to start something new." Lydia stood beside him. "You want to buy it?" "I want to try," he said, turning to her. "I have a little money saved, and I know cattle, I know horse, and I know this land. But if I cannot find a way to make a down payment, the bank will not give me a loan." "Banks do not loan money to ranch hands," Lydia said quietly, stating the harsh truth. "I know," he said, his voice full of frustration. "I know it is a long shot, but I have to try. I cannot marry you and offer you nothing but a hired man's life." "I do not care about that," she insisted. "But I do," he said, taking her hands in his. "You deserve so much more. You deserve everything, and I want to give it to you." Looking at the man who had risked everything for her, Lydia made a sudden decision. I have money, she said quietly. Rowan frowned in confusion. What did you say? My inheritance from my grandmother. It is not, maybe $500, but it is mine. She smiled, a brilliant idea forming. My mother told me to save it for emergencies. I think building a life with the man I love certainly counts as an emergency. Lydia, I cannot take your money. You are not taking it. We are investing it together. This is our future, Rowan, not just yours, and I want to build it with you. He stared at her, and a slow, hopeful smile began to spread across his face. Are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything, she replied. But it will not be easy, he warned. The place needs a lot of work, and we might fail. We might lose everything. I know, she said, cupping his face. But I would rather fail with you than succeed with anyone else. I want to build something real that belongs to us. Rowan closed his eyes, his heart overflowing. His eyes shone with emotion. God, I love you. I love you too. She kissed him gently. Now let's go buy ourselves a ranch. Buying the Larsson ranch was far from quick or easy. There were lawyers to see, and papers to sign, and bank officers to convince. The local banker, a hefty man named Henderson, who smelled of cigars, looked at Rowan with clear disdain, as if he were a nuisance stuck to his shoe. A ranch hand, Henderson muttered, peering over his glasses. With no collateral, no credit, and no experience running your own place? And you expect me to lend you money? I do have experience, Rowan said firmly. 5 years with the Cartwrights, managing herds twice the size of what I'm proposing. Before that, 10 years working my way up, learning every part of the cattle business. I know this work deep down. Henderson's lips curled in a sneer. The Cartwrights? Yes, the ones tied up in that scandal, the trial, the whole mess. Not exactly a glowing reference. Rowan's jaw tightened. I helped expose a murderer and save 2 innocent women. If you see that as a strike against me, I think your judgment needs fixing. Henderson flushed, but was cut off when Lydia stepped forward. Mr. Henderson, may I be direct? The banker blinked, clearly unused to a woman joining the conversation like this. My family has banked here for 20 years. My father's accounts, my grandmother's trust, and the money from our cattle sales. That's a strong tie I would hate to see broken. Henderson's expression shifted from dismissive to thoughtful. What exactly are you suggesting, Miss Mercer? I'm asking you to consider this loan just as carefully as any applicant with a solid plan and honest intentions. Lydia met his gaze steadily. Hale and I can put down $500 now. We want a loan for $30,000 to be paid back over 5 years with fair interest. The land is collateral. If we can't pay, you get the property. What's your real risk? Henderson stayed silent for a long moment, eyes flicking between them. Then he sighed. You make a strong case, Miss Mercer. He reached for a stack of papers and shuffled them. I'll need your father to co-sign as a guarantor, and the rules will be strict. 1 missed payment, and we foreclose immediately. No exceptions. Understood, Rowan said firmly. All right. Henderson slid the papers forward. Sign here, here, and here. God help you. You're going to need it. An hour later, they left the bank with the deed to the Larsson ranch in Rowan's hands. He stared at it as if it might disappear if he blinked. We did it, he whispered. We actually did it. Lydia took his arm and leaned her head on his shoulder. We did, but now the real work starts. He laughed, pure joy spilling out. I'm made for hard work. Bring it on. That afternoon, they rode out to the Larsson place together, the deeds safely stowed in Rowan's saddlebag. The road was rough, barely a path through the grass, but the views were breathtaking, rolling hills dotted with tall pines and a distant shimmer of sunlight. Very well. Henderson pushed the papers across the desk. Sign here, here, and here, and may God help you, because you'll need it. They walked out of the bank an hour later, the deed to the Larsson spread clutched in Rowan's hands. He stared at it like it might disappear if he looked away. We did it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We actually did it. We did. Lydia took his arm, leaned against his shoulder. Now the hard part begins. He laughed, a sound of pure, unguarded joy. I can handle hard. Hard is what I was built for. They rode out to the Larsson place that afternoon, side by side, the deeds safely tucked in Rowan's saddlebag. The road was rough, barely more than a track through the grass, but the views were stunning, rolling hills dotted with stands of pine, the distant shimmer of they found the creek Rowan mentioned, with mountains watching over them like guardians. The house was a sturdy log cabin, weathered but strong despite a sagging porch. Lydia stepped closer, her heart filled with a nervous excitement. "It needs a new roof," she said, "and the porch needs rebuilding." Rowan came and stood beside her, taking her hand in his. "Is there anything you actually like about it?" he asked gently. Lydia smiled. "I love the bones of it, strong, solid, and built to last." She looked at him. "Just like you." "Get used to it," as she added. "I plan to say nice things to you for the rest of our lives." They walked through the dusty but solid house together. The fireplace worked, and the kitchen had a good iron stove. The cozy back bedroom had a window overlooking the peaceful creek. "This is where we'll sleep every night," Lydia declared softly. Rowan wrapped his arms around her. "You have it all planned out, don't you?" He kissed her temple, and thank goodness for that. They spent the afternoon walking the property, surveying the land that held their future. As the sun set, Lydia felt both tired and thrilled. This was real. This broken-down ranch in Montana was finally her home. "We should head back," Rowan said, not wanting to leave. "Not yet," Lydia whispered, pulling him close as the first stars appeared. "I want to remember this exact moment, when our life truly began." They stood together in the quiet darkness, at the start of something wonderful. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of pine. A distant coyote howled, and Lydia felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The following weeks were filled with hard, satisfying work. Rowan was determined, working from sunrise to sunset to repair the house. Lydia helped him while also managing all the household supplies. She bought lumber, tools, and hired help for the heavy lifting. Her mother, Martha, visited once, calling the whole thing foolish, but she also admitted it wasn't hopeless, which from her was high praise. Elena started visiting often, bringing food and a bright energy that cheered them all. The town gossip about her broken engagement had already faded away. She seemed lighter now, free from expectations she had never wanted for herself. One afternoon, she confided in Lydia, "I've been thinking about teaching at the school in town." "You would be wonderful at that," Lydia said, meaning every word. "Do you really think so?" Elena asked, her voice filled with a hopeful uncertainty. "Mother says it is beneath me and that I should be looking for another husband." "Mother says a lot of things," Lydia replied, wringing water from a shirt. "The only question is, what do you want?" Elena smiled a true smile. "I want to be useful, but not in the way Silas meant. I want to be useful like you are, building something real." "Then you should teach," Lydia said, taking her sister's hands. "It's your life, Elena. You decide." Elena laughed through happy tears. "When did you become so wise?" "I guess nearly dying a few times helps you figure things out." The sisters laughed together, a sound of new understanding between them. By December, their small house was finally livable, a real home. The roof was patched, the windows had glass, and a warm fire always burned in the fireplace. Rowan had built them a sturdy bed, and Lydia had sewn beautiful curtains. These small touches had turned a simple structure into a cozy home. On Christmas Eve, they stood together, watching the quiet snow fall outside. Into the peaceful silence, Rowan suddenly said, "We should get married." Lydia turned to him, completely surprised. "Are you proposing to me?" "I am," he said, pulling a small, shining ring from his pocket. "I was going to wait for a perfect moment, but this feels more perfect than any plan. I simply do not want to wait another day to ask you." He opened his hand, revealing a simple silver ring, worn smooth by time. "This was my mother's. She made me promise I would give it to the woman I truly loved. I have carried this for 15 years, always waiting for the right person. Then you came along, and I knew. I knew it was you." Tears streamed down Lydia's face as he took her hand, slipped the ring on her finger, and asked, "Marry me, Lydia." It fit perfectly. "Marry me, Lydia. Make this our home. You already deserve me," she whispered, kissing him with all her heart. "Yes," she cried softly. "Yes, I will marry you." They held each other as the fire crackled and the snow fell outside. In that moment, they found a courage they never knew they possessed. Their wedding took place on a frosty February morning. The small church was filled with their family, friends, and neighbors. Lydia wore her mother's simple wedding dress, perfectly altered by Elena. It was not fashionable, but on her, it was absolutely perfect. She carried dried wildflowers from the spring where their love had grown. Her father walked her down the aisle, his eyes bright with pride. Martha Mercer watched with grudging acceptance, while Elena beamed with pure joy. At the altar, Rowan stood waiting with a patient heart. He wore his only suit, a second-hand one that didn't quite fit his shoulders. His hair was already rebelling, and his hands were rough from hard work. He was not what some people would call a great catch, but when Lydia saw him, she saw everything she ever wanted. The minister began the familiar and comforting words of the ceremony. With a trembling voice, she repeated her vows to love and to cherish him. Rowan gently slipped a simple gold band onto her finger. It was warm from his hand, purchased with the last of his savings. Then the minister pronounced them husband and wife. Rowan's kiss was so tender, it brought tears to Lydia's eyes. In that instant, the invisible sister she used to be disappeared forever. In her place stood someone new, a woman who had won her own happiness. She was Mrs. Rowan Hale. The name felt right, like finding your way home after a long storm. They were now partners, united by love, trust, and determination. Their reception was a joyful party at the Mercer homestead. The whole community came to celebrate with food, music, and dancing. During a quiet moment, William Mercer took Lydia aside, his expression serious. "I was wrong," he admitted, and it was hard for him to say the words. "I was wrong about Rowan and about what really matters in a husband. I was so focused on money and status and what other people would think. I almost let you marry into a terrible situation." "Father." "No, let me finish." He took her hands and held them tight. "You made a better choice than I ever could have for you. Rowan is a good man, the best man I have ever known. Watching you these last few months, I have seen you truly come alive in a way I have never seen before." He stopped, his voice filled with emotion. "That is all I ever wanted for you, Lydia, for both of my girls. True happiness." "I am happy," Lydia said, squeezing his hands. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." "I know," he said, with a smile full of love and regret. "Now go dance with your husband, start your life, and always know you have a home here." "Thank you, Father." She kissed his cheek. She returned to Rowan's side and took his hand as the music started. They danced together, a little clumsy and laughing. Neither had ever cared much for dancing, but with each other, they had found a perfect rhythm. The sun was setting when they finally left. The sky was a beautiful painting of orange and pink, and Lydia wished she had her sketchbook. But that was all right. Some moments were meant to be lived, not just captured on paper. They rode toward their new house side by side as the first stars appeared in the night sky. Their home waited for them at the end of the road. Smoke drifted from the chimney, a sign that a kind neighbor had started a fire for them. The windows glowed with warm lamplight. It was home. Rowan got off his horse first, then helped Lydia down. Before she knew it, he swept her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" She laughed. "I'm carrying my wife over the threshold," he grinned. "It's tradition." "You will hurt your ribs again." "They are all healed," he promised. "Besides, you are worth a little bit of pain." He carried her through the door and gently set her down. The fire crackled cheerfully in the fireplace. Someone had left a vase of early spring flowers on the table. The entire house smelled of fresh wood smoke and new beginnings. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hale," Rowan said in a soft voice. "Welcome home, Mr. Hale," she replied. They stood there for a long moment, simply looking at each other in the new life they had built together. Their future stretched out before them, as vast and full of promise as the big Montana sky. "I love you," Lydia said. "I think I started loving you the day you returned my sketchbook. I just didn't know it yet." "I knew," Rowan whispered, pulling her close. "The first time I saw you drawing by the creek, I knew you were special. I knew you were worth waiting a lifetime for." "You did not have to wait a lifetime," she said softly. "No," he smiled, that amazing smile that first captured her heart. "Just long enough to know when this was real." They kissed in the warm firelight. They were husband and wife, two people who found each other against all odds and discovered a happiness neither had dared to dream of. Outside, the wind blew down from the mountains, carrying the promise of more snow. The winter was not over. The road ahead was long and difficult, with no promises of success. But inside their home, Lydia felt nothing but pure hope. This was her life, her choice. She was finally where she was meant to be. Springtime came softly to Montana. The snow melted away, revealing fresh green grass across the Larsson ranch. The creek flowed full and fast. Lydia stood on her porch, watching the morning. She held a warm cup of coffee as the sun rose over the mountains. A year had passed since her wedding. 12 months of struggle and small triumphs. They were building a life with only love and determination to guide them. The ranch was still a struggle, but it was alive, and so were they. The sound of hoofbeats made her look up. She smiled when she saw Rowan riding toward her. He was returning from checking on their small herd of cattle. He looked tired, worn down by the endless work, but his face held a special joy. It was a look she had not seen in weeks. "Good news?" she called out to him. "Better than good," he said, running up to give her a deep kiss. "We have 3 healthy new calves, and another one is on the way." "That is wonderful," Lydia laughed with pure joy. "It is a real start." Rowan held her close. "A real start. If we can just get through this summer, we might actually have something to sell by the fall." "We will," she said, touching his face. "I know it." They held each other quietly. The sun rose higher as the world around them woke up with sound. It was a symphony of new life and new possibilities. "I have something to tell you, too," Lydia said softly. Rowan looked concerned. "What is it?" he asked. "Is everything okay?" "Nothing is wrong," she smiled, placing his hand on her belly. "Everything is perfect." It took a moment for him to understand. His expression changed from confusion to pure shock. Then a deep joy filled his eyes. "You mean—" His voice cracked. "We're going to—" Tears streamed down her face too. "Yes, we are having a baby, due in the fall." He was speechless. His hand trembled against her stomach before he slowly knelt down. He pressed his forehead to her belly and began to cry with overwhelming emotion. Lydia stroked his hair as his shoulders shook. After all they had survived, this was everything. It felt like a miracle, a confirmation that they had chosen the right path. Rowan whispered against her stomach, "I love you, both of you." "I know," she said, gently wiping the tears from his cheeks. They held each other as the morning sun bathed the ranch in a golden light. And deep inside, Lydia felt the faintest flutter of life growing. The future they had fought so hard for was finally, beautifully, beginning. In a small Montana town, news of a pregnancy travels fast. Elena was the first to visit, arriving on horseback with a basket and a brilliant smile. "I am going to be an aunt," she exclaimed, pulling Lydia into a fierce hug. "I cannot believe it. How are you feeling? I brought you some ginger tea." "Elena, breathe," Lydia laughed, pulling back from the embrace. "I am fine. Better than fine. I am wonderful." Elena studied her. "You are glowing. That is what people always say, is it not?" "I think it is just sweat," Lydia joked. "No, it is definitely a glow," Elena insisted. As they walked to the house, Elena asked, "How is Rowan taking the news?" "He cried for an hour," Lydia smiled. "Then he went to build a cradle. He is already carving little horses into the headboard. He will be an amazing father." "More like a nervous wreck," Elena laughed. "I can just picture him pacing." "Probably," Lydia agreed, but she loved Rowan's fierce, protective nature. It was one of the many things that had first drawn her to him. They settled on the porch with tea, watching Rowan work in the distance. Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if I had married Silas?" Lydia paused for a long moment. "Only in my nightmares. I picture you trapped in that big house, just slowly disappearing. I see myself fading away, becoming invisible, just like the other women. Like Catherine and Margaret. I wonder if we would have ended up like them." "We would have." Elena's voice was certain. "He was already controlling me. If Rowan had not warned you, if you had not been so brave." She trailed off. She shook her head. "You saved my life, Lydia." "We both did." Her hand. "I'll spend my life showing you how grateful I am." That spring, the trial of Silas Cartwright had been a spectacle. The evidence against him was overwhelming, with testimony after testimony painting him as a monster. He was quickly convicted of murder and sentenced to be hanged. Lydia and Elena did not attend the execution. They only needed to know that he could never hurt anyone again. The shame of it all was too much for Silas's father, Jacob, who died of a heart attack a week later. His wife, Margaret, sold the family ranch and fled back east, disappearing from Montana society. The Cartwright name, once a symbol of power, became a cautionary tale whispered across the territory. Justice, Lydia thought, had finally been served. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. "How is your teaching going?" she asked Elena, wanting a lighter topic. Elena's face lit up. "It is wonderful. The children are so eager to learn, especially the older girls. I'm teaching them history and mathematics, subjects they were never allowed to study before." Lydia teased, "Mother must be thrilled." Elena grinned. "She has finally accepted that we are living our own lives." Elena squeezed her sister's hand. "Speaking of new lives, have you thought about names for the baby?" Lydia smiled, placing a hand on her stomach. "We have. If it's a boy, he will be William, after our father." She paused, her expression softening. "And if it is a girl, I want to name her Rose, after Rowan's mother." "Rose Hale," Elena said, testing the name. "That is a beautiful name." Rowan said his mother was kind and strong. She dreamed of being an artist before she married. "She used to draw flowers in her books," Lydia added. Elena smiled. "Like you draw mountains." Lydia looked out at the familiar peaks. "Yes, just like I draw mountains." "I hope our daughter inherits that," she said softly. "The need to see the beauty in things and share it." "She will," Elena said with certainty. "With you and Rowan as her parents, she'll have the best of both worlds." They sat in a comfortable silence, watching the afternoon shadows grow long across the peaceful valley. The air smelled of wildflowers and fresh grass. A hawk circled high above them. "I should go," Elena finally said, standing up. "I have lessons to prepare for the morning." Lydia smiled warmly. "Thank you for coming, Elena, for everything." "No," Elena replied, her own eyes shining. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the shadows grow long. A soft breeze carried the scent of wildflowers from the valley below. "I should go," Elena finally said, standing up from her chair. "The children have their lessons in the morning. Thank you again for everything, for being my sister." Elena gave her a final hug. "I will be back so often. You will get tired of me." Lydia smiled as she watched her sister ride away. She turned back toward the house, thinking of the future growing inside her. For the first time in a very long time, Lydia Mercer Hale felt completely at peace. That summer was much harder than they had expected. The long Montana drought had eased a little, but water was still hard to find, and their creek was just a trickle by July. Rowan spent his days digging channels for water, trying to save the garden Lydia had planted. He also had to water the pastures for their small herd. Lydia worked as much as she could. She ran the house, managed the money, and did the lighter chores that Rowan allowed. Her pregnancy was going well, and the early sickness was gone. Now she felt a new energy that surprised her, connecting her to the land and their new life. But some nights were dark. Rowan would come in from the fields, too tired to eat or sleep. The bank loan payments felt like a constant storm cloud on the horizon. Their savings seemed to get smaller, not bigger. Lydia worried they had dreamed too big. One night she whispered to Rowan, "Tell me everything is going to be all right." He held her close, his hand resting on her stomach. "It's going to be all right," he answered. "Do you really believe that?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at her in the moonlight. "I believe in you," he said. "I believe in us. We have survived so much already. We are still here, still fighting for our dream." He gently touched her face. "This life is hard, but we are harder. As long as we have each other, we cannot give up." His voice was full of emotion. "I have to believe it will be all right. I cannot imagine any other way." Lydia held him tightly, feeling his steady heartbeat. "I love you. I love you too." He held her closer. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow is another long day." She slept, dreaming of a child with whiskey-colored eyes, running through fields of flowers. Their big break came in late August. Lydia was very pregnant and resting on the porch. A rider was slowly approaching the ranch. Lydia watched him from the porch. She shielded her eyes from the sun, trying to see who it was. It was not her sister, Elena, and it was not her father, who also visited regularly. As the rider got closer, she knew him. It was Thomas Reed, one of the wealthiest cattle ranchers in the entire territory. He was known for his fairness and for treating his workers well. "Mrs. Hale," he said, tipping his hat, "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, Mr. Reed." Lydia struggled to her feet, feeling a bit clumsy. "My husband is out in the pasture. I can go get him for you." "Actually, I came to see both of you," Reed said, his eyes admiring their neat property. "I have been hearing some very good things about your ranch. My people tell me you have something special here," he continued. "They say you have good instincts and a strong work ethic." Lydia's heart began to beat a little faster. "What are you proposing, Mr. Reed?" "I'm looking to expand my breeding program, and I need partners I can trust. I think I have a proposition that could benefit all of us." Rowan returned soon after, covered in dust and sweat from a hard day's work. He listened to Reed's proposal, his expression shifting from doubt to excitement. Reed wanted to place his own prize cattle on their ranch. In exchange, he offered a share of the calves in incredibly generous terms. The deal included his veterinarian and a guaranteed buyer for their calves. "Why us?" Rowan asked. "You could work with much bigger ranches. Why take a chance on us?" Reed looked at him for a long moment. "Because I remember starting from nothing, and I know quality work when I see it. And also," he said, his tone changing, "I heard what you did for the Mercer women. You risked everything to protect them from a terrible man. That tells me more about your character than 100 references ever could." Rowan and Lydia exchanged a meaningful glance. "We are interested," Rowan said. "Good," Reed said, extending his hand. "Then let us work out the details." They talked for hours, planning a future that suddenly seemed incredibly bright. By the time Reed left, the sun was setting and Lydia was exhausted but happy. As Rowan helped her back to the house, she felt a change inside her. The weight of fear and doubt that she had carried for months finally began to lift. "We are going to be all right," she whispered. Rowan smiled at her. "We really are." 3 weeks later, their baby was born on a beautiful moonlit night. Lydia felt a strange restlessness all day, pacing the house with nervous energy. By evening, the reason became clear as the first pains began to build. She gripped a chair to steady herself and gasped to Rowan, "It is time. Get the doctor," she urged, "and please get Elena. It is happening now." What followed was the longest and most difficult night of Lydia's life. The doctor arrived from town with Elena right behind him, ready to help. Even her mother came, her usual stern face softened by genuine worry. Rowan was sent out of the room, as was the custom, but he refused to leave the house. Lydia could hear his constant, anxious footsteps pacing in the main room. Just as the first light of dawn appeared, their baby girl was born. She was small and perfect, with a full head of dark hair. "She is so beautiful," Elena whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. Lydia held her daughter, overcome by a love so fierce it took her breath away. "What will you name her?" the doctor asked, washing his hands nearby. Lydia gently touched her baby's perfect cheek and said softly, "Her name is Rose." They finally let Rowan in to meet the daughter they had created together. He took Rose in his arms with incredible care, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Hello, little one," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I am your father. I promise you I will spend my life making sure you always know how loved you are." Rose made a tiny sound, and Rowan beamed as if it were the most wonderful word. Lydia's heart felt full enough to burst. This was the life she never dared to dream of. The woman who once felt invisible was now a wife, a mother, and a business partner. Their shared dream, the ranch, was finally beginning to succeed, and it was everything. The months that followed were a wonderful blur of sleepless nights and happy days. Rose grew quickly, thriving in the crisp, clean Montana air. The partnership with Thomas Reed was even more successful than they had imagined. The Hale Ranch was becoming a local legend, a true testament to their hard work. Lydia even found stolen moments to return to her sketching. Her art had become more confident, filled with the love that defined her new life. She still drew the beautiful mountains, but now her favorite subject was always Rose. The hard work had paid off, with cattle grazing peacefully on their land. As summer ended, Lydia sat on the porch with her baby, Rose. She sketched the sunset as it painted the sky golden red. While Rose slept beside her, Rowan was in the barn, checking on a mare that was about to give birth. After all the fear and danger they had survived, this quiet peace felt like a gift. Her daughter slept, her husband was near, and their ranch was thriving. It was a wonderful dream, and she feared waking up. Rowan's footsteps brought her back. He sat beside her, their shoulders touching as he looked at her sketch. "That's beautiful," he said. "The sunset or the drawing?" she asked. He smiled and took her hand. "Both." He continued, "You know, I have been thinking." "That sounds dangerous," she teased. He laughed. "I was thinking about those picture books you wanted to make for children out here." Lydia was stunned. She had only mentioned that idea to him once, years ago. She dreamed of books that showed the beauty and wonder of the West, not just the struggle. "I remember," she said softly, "but that was just a silly dream." "Why was it silly?" Rowan asked. He looked directly at her. "Lydia, you are an incredible artist. Think of all the children here. Most of them have never even seen a picture book. Why shouldn't you be the one to change that?" "Because I am a rancher's wife," she said. "I have a baby and a home to manage." "You are also the woman who risked everything to save your sister," he said gently. "You saw something in me worth loving. You have more courage than anyone I know." He squeezed her hand. "You can do both, Lydia. We will figure it out together." Tears welled in her eyes. "You really think people would want to see my drawings?" "I know they will," he said with complete certainty. "They will line up to buy them. And even if not, we can make copies for our children and Elena's students. It would be worth it." "Your gift deserves to be shared," he told her. "The world should see things the way you do." She looked down at the simple, beautiful sunset she had drawn. Then she looked at Rowan. He was the man who had always believed in her, the one who had truly seen her from the very start. To remember the dropped sketchbook that started it all. "Okay," she finally whispered. "Let's do this." "You really mean it?" A bright, hopeful smile spread across her face. "We are going to make picture books," Rowan said, kissing her forehead. "That is my girl." As the stars came out, they sat together and planned a future that was finally theirs. It all felt like an impossible dream. Her daughter Rose stirred and made a soft sound. Lydia held her close, whispering a promise about making beautiful picture books. She dreamed of a day when Rose would help her draw the mountains and horses. A year later, that dream arrived in wooden crates at the Hale Ranch. Rowan carefully carried in the first copies of her book, Montana Dreams. Her hands trembled as she lifted the very first book from the box. The cover was a watercolor of a Montana sunrise she had painted herself, and there, at the bottom, was her name, Lydia Mercer Hale. "It's real," she whispered in disbelief. Rowan smiled. "Of course it is." He wrapped his arms around her, saying, "I never had a single doubt." Her friend Elena had helped find a special printer in Helena for the books. The first run of 100 copies sold out in just 1 week. The book was filled with her paintings of wild horses and secret valleys. Each picture had simple words, perfect for children to understand. It captured all the hope and magic Lydia saw in the world around her. Little Rose, now 2 years old, toddled over to see the new book. She was a curious toddler who already loved to scribble with the charcoal. Lydia knelt and opened the book for her daughter. "See the mountains, sweetie? Just like ours," Lydia said softly. Rose pointed to a page with a look of intense focus. "Horse Run," she said clearly, making Lydia's heart swell with joy. Then, like in any toddler, she was quickly off to find something new to explore. Lydia held the book, looking at the wonderful life she had built. Their house had grown with a new room just for Rose. The ranch was thriving thanks to their partnership with Thomas Reed. Elena visited often, and even Lydia's father came by, full of pride. Having a grandchild had finally softened her mother's heart. And then there was Rowan, her true partner in everything. They shared all the work, the worries, and the joys of their life. His smile still made her heart leap, and he made her feel truly loved. "What's on your mind?" Rowan asked, his voice soft. "Everything," Lydia said with a small smile. "How far we've come." He crossed the room and took her hands. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one," she said, rising to kiss him as he smiled. "Good," he said warmly. "I was hoping we could give Rose a sibling." Lydia laughed with pure joy. "I think that can be arranged." We can afford it, she added. Our life is good now, thanks to you. Thanks to us, Lydia corrected gently, and everything we did together. Rowan nodded. To us. They stood holding each other close. Outside, the afternoon sun shone on their beautiful, thriving ranch. The entire valley was green and full of life. They had built this kingdom not on duty, but on love and courage. I love you, Lydia Hale, Rowan whispered against her hair. I love you too, she replied, smiling up at the man who had chosen her. I always have, and I always will. Their story, which started by a simple creek, had become a lasting legacy. They had built a family on hope, and a love that conquered all. It was a love stronger than fear, and stronger than any hardship. Lydia once believed the frontier was no place for a dreamer like her. Rowan had proved her wrong, and she proved it to herself every day. Their story was not an ending, but a continuing journey. They filled their ordinary days with extraordinary love. Their daughter Rose grew up with her mother's creative spirit, and she also had her father's quiet strength and determination. Rose learned that in Montana, dreams were not a luxury, but a necessity. Soon after, a son named William came along to join them. Then twins arrived one autumn night, filling the house with laughter. The ranch prospered and became one of the most respected in the territory, and Lydia's books brought the magic of the frontier to children everywhere. Through it all, Lydia and Rowan's love remained the heart of everything. They were partners, lovers, and the very best of friends. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they celebrated a life they built together. They returned to the hidden spring where their story first began. With the kids staying with Elena, the night was just for them. They could simply be themselves, a dreamer and a wrangler. The spring was as clear and perfect as Lydia had remembered it. Wildflowers grew by the rocks where they sat watching the sunset. The weight of all their years settled around them like a warm blanket. Do you remember the first time I brought you here? Rowan asked softly. Lydia leaned on his shoulder. I remember thinking you were the most frustrating man. And now I think you are the most wonderful, he laughed. Fair enough. They sat in a comfortable silence as the first stars started to appear. The land they fought so hard for felt peaceful and alive around them. I have been thinking about what we have built, Lydia finally said. And what have you decided, he asked, watching her. That happiness is not something you find. It is something you create. You have to choose it every day, especially when things are hard. Rowan nodded, and I have concluded that I was never invisible. I was just waiting for someone like you, who knew how to see me. She gently touched the lines on his face. You taught me I was worth seeing. He smiled. You were always worth seeing, and worth loving. His voice was full of emotion. I was just the lucky fool who saw it first. They kissed under the stars, two people made stronger by everything they faced. They were two dreamers who dared to build a different kind of life. The bright full moon lit their path as they rode back home. Their house was waiting, warm and welcoming and filled with life. Children's drawings were on the walls and books were stacked everywhere. Lydia stopped at the door, looking back one last time at the mountains. The mountains stood against the sky, like old friends watching over them. Coming, Rowan called, and she breathed in the cool Montana air, feeling perfectly home. She remembered the girl by the creek who felt she deserved nothing. She was now a mother, an artist, and a strong rancher's wife. The cowboy had looked right past her sister and had chosen her. His love gave her the courage to finally believe in herself. Lydia Mercer Hale smiled, then walked into their finished home. Their story was not a fairy tale without any challenges. The land was harsh and the work was always hard, but they faced every single thing together with love and grit. The sister that no one chose became the woman everyone admired. The ranch hand who started with nothing now had everything that mattered. Their legacy in Montana was a real and true happily ever after.